It is 12 o'clock and we are going to start our next session. I want to say thank you so much, Pablo Vargas, for joining us today. His topic is understanding what it means to work for yourself as an independent contractor. So I'm going to let you take it on, and I want to say thank you for joining us and being part of this programming. And he is also one of our alums. So I'll let you have the Zoom floor, Pablo.
Thank you. I'm really happy to see a lot of familiar faces here, actually. I'm here today to talk about kind of my journey as a professional and how Dominican helped me in that. And I'm happy to say a lot of the people in the Zoom call have been kind of instrumental in helping me kind of become the independent contractor, the freelancer, the graphic designer, and the creative that I am, and that I, continue to develop into. So really, thank you to you as well. And I'm really happy to see some familiar faces from when I was a student as well. But yeah, give me a second because I made some doodles to go with my presentation. So let me share them right now. But just so you know, I think on this side of your call, you'll have a view option where you can split your screen so you can get the best of both worlds. You can see the speaker, you can see my doodles as well. So feel free to do that. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, so I see you all. Do you see me? Oh, spoilers.
Yes, we see you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, let me just start then. As I said, I'm an alum, and I'm here today, but I didn't always picture myself working as an independent contractor. So just a little background though. My name is Pablo. I'm undocumented and I'm an alum from UndocuResource, and I actually didn't major in graphic design yet, and I'm a graphic designer today. And it's an interesting story, a lot of plot twists that ended up in me working as a graphic designer. But today I just want to show you and share with you a lot of the insight that I've gained through working for myself and being my own boss and managing my own LLC and navigating this murky waters that I've I was practically thrown into. But again, getting a lot of help along the way and loving it today, and sitting here telling you kind of it's a wonderful chance for you to explore yourself, what you can do, and your own potential. So today I think I want to share like 10 things, and I made it kind of, I watch a lot of TikTok lately, so I broke it down into 10 things. So I can make it into a TikTok later, basically. But let's see. So the first one is, like I said, I didn't even major in graphic design, but it was something I really, really liked. I actually have a bachelor's in natural science and a minor in biology and another minor in graphic design. So it's like one piece of the cake is not what I studied. But I think one of the hardest realizations that I had is that as an undocumented person without DACA, I couldn't really work in the healthcare industry. So the next best thing really was, pursuing this really great hobby of mine, which was graphic design. And throughout my career, I did take a bunch of classes, typography, illustration. I took graphic design 1, 2, 3. I took all of them. They should have given me the major, but that's not the point. The point is, I was faced with a decision of, going back home and not graduating, not pursuing my education, or focus on this instead, right? And I think these phrases are really funny because I've never been given a lemon, but I was given, my undocumented status. And so you don't really see the meaning of these phrases until you're there standing in those shoes, right? So at the moment, I had really two choices, kind of go back home, not graduate, and just practically just work with my family, or I could try to do it for myself, right? And so this is where a lot of that mindset comes in where I I found myself really trying to, sorry, 1 second. Oof. I have a thought, 1 second. Okay, yeah. I found myself trying to weigh my options and sort of realize, do I really want to do this, or is this something that is worth my time? And I really was the one that believed in myself at least. And it took a lot of these people supporting me to kind of understand that I had this really viable path towards a decent income, towards something that I like to do and something that I can turn into a career. And if I went a year back and told myself that I was going to be a graphic designer, not a year, 4 years, I wouldn't have believed you. I grew up in this household that sort of considered creative careers as not as less than, less profitable, less livable, less fulfilling, less respectable. So it was really hard for me to make this first decision, but I ended up making lemonade. So I'm really happy I did. I love lemonade. The second one is knowledge is power. And I say that because my first year of college, I was really in denial about my situation. And, looking back, who blames that little guy? I was, thrown into college, and it seemed like every other person had it easier to pick their career. And I chose to ignore the fact that my situation was different, and that really affected me. So I guess, and this one is really simple, really, and if you're here, I think you're doing something right. And it's that if you know what your situation is, then you can do something about it. Don't live in denial. I know it's pretty on trend these days, but we should strive to understand the situation better, because the more information we have, the more we can do with it, and the more things we can do to better our position and better our situation. The next one is, and this one I can't stress enough, a mentor is important, but a mentor that gets your particular position, and that means being undocumented in this case, really changed the game for me. I think a lot of my professors, I was in science, a lot of my professors were white and didn't understand what being undocumented meant. And it wasn't until I found a mentor, Fanny Lopez, actually, who used to work at Dominican, who was undocumented when they were a student and graduated as an undocumented student from Dominican University. It wasn't until I met her that I really understood how many chances there are for people like us, and how many people there are to support us, and how many people get you. It's easy to feel alone when you're dealing with different situations, and I'm talking about my case especially because it wasn't something that I came into college wanting to do, but it was something that I grew into loving, if that makes sense. But finding a mentor was, I think, instrumental. And a lot of these people in this call, actually, Jackie, Maria, Kelly, all of you have served as kind of a mentor in this way, in one way or another. So I want to thank you for that too, by the way. But seeing yourself in someone is really, really important. And it can help you see yourself succeed more. The fourth one, I think Dominican is really good at, and I know we have people from other schools here, but this is where I brag about my school, and I tell you, we're really, really friendly, and we are really purposely building connections. And this is something that still to this day pays off when it comes to my work, right? I'm still getting calls from alum, from staff that say, hey, I remember that logo you did for RSA. Like, do you still do that? Or show me your website. Or I remember what you did for the CCL. Let's talk. What can we do for this? And really, if I didn't make those connections, I don't think I would be getting a lot of work that I had right now. And the good thing about connections that you make while you're in college is they get to see you learn to be that professional. So they know your character, they know your dedication, and it's easier to sell yourself versus a stranger on a Fiverr website or a Upwork. there's really a solidarity that comes with being part of that community. And so while you're in college, I think my advice would be to connect with as many people as possible if you're planning to work with yourself, because that's where a lot of your work can come in, your references, your really your support. And I think it's essential if you're working for yourself, because being a one a one man show, I think it's a lot of work, and the more support you can get, the better. The fifth one, I think, is the one that, if I'm being honest, I still struggle with it, and it's being shameless about your work. And I'm in a creative field where a perfectionist and a person who's really self-critical, like me, I'm really hesitant about putting my work out there, but it's something that I need to continue to do because it's the only way that I'm getting out there. Even though I might not be happy with where my work is, or where think about where it could be, it shouldn't stop me from sharing it now, share my progress now. And it's something that I'm growing into again. A lot of these things I'm still working on, but it's something that if you don't start to do, it's never going to happen. You just need to start doing, and stop thinking about what can be, or what could be better, and instead just start doing, because you need those building blocks to build a tower, right? And the higher it goes, the more you'll be like, wow, this is really high. But if you don't start putting the bricks down, you're not going to get any height, and you're not going to progress a lot. I think starting is the best thing you can do. It doesn't matter where you are, if you're a graphic designer, or if you have another avenue in which you're trying to work as an entrepreneur. Doing it perfectly is not going to happen on the first try. So you just have to be shameless about it and promote it everywhere. I think you have to be your own salesman, and you have to be your own best supporter. So why not start now? Why wait until your hypothetical perfect technique is achieved, right? You need to do it now, because that's how you get better, and that's how you get out there, and that's how you make a living when you're an entrepreneur and when you're an independent contractor. The sixth one is really, I see it in the context of my work, and it's that I find that it's easier to find clients when you do one thing or two things really good, versus when you do 20 things pretty okay. And it's kind of counterintuitive, because we're just trying to get as many. This is my mindset, at least in the beginning. It was that I was trying to get as many jobs as possible, right? And so I would do website design, I would do illustration, I would do branding, I would do motion graphics, I would do video editing. Every job I had, I said yes to. But I wasn't really honing in my potential to one skill. And it wasn't until I did that I found out how fast you can really progress, and how the more of a good fit you are for a client, I think the better it is for you to convince them, and the easier it is. So if you have 20 projects that are all branding, you really know what you're doing, versus if you have two in a sea of your portfolio, right? So if you're trying to sell yourself as an authority, sell yourself as an expert, and you do that by sticking to a niche, sticking to a thing that you know that you can do well. I think the seventh thing, and I was talking to Maria about this, is that I had a Latino mother, right? And she was my boss for the first 18 years of my life. And she was not a good boss. And, I took a lot of her ways into me managing my own self. And that's what that looks like is like really unrealistic expectations, like working more than 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day, working weekends. And I really was not a good boss to myself during the first 2 months of working for myself. And I say this because I see it out this way, that if you're your own boss, you should be a good boss, right? And if you're your own employee, you should be a good employee. And what that means is letting yourself, the employee, breathe and rest and kind of think about your work, not just go, 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 but as a boss too, to set yourself, your employee self for success, as weird as it sounds. That means, scheduling everything you need to do. Yeah, that means doing a lot of the paperwork that you don't want to do so that your employee self can continue to do the things that you really like, right? When I talk about my work, I really enjoy the creative process and talking to people about things and talking about concepts. And what I really don't like to do is the paperwork, right? You should leave that for your boss or the people in HR, but when you're working for yourself, you need to do this as well. And the creative work, the thing that you love can't happen if you don't do that as well. So really, you're just setting yourself up for success even more if you take these things into consideration and not just focus on your job. Because when you're your own boss, your job really is to be your own company. And you're going to be putting a lot of hats on, but that's just how it is. And it gets to be fun sometimes, but a lot of the times too, it can be stressful, right? So this is where the next thing comes in. I think, as I said, I wasn't a good boss to myself, and I would demand a lot of myself. So today, I think I'm getting better at it because I realize I don't have to say yes to every project, and I don't have to take on everything that comes across. I really just think, and this is something that it's really hard to break through because of my culture, but I try to work on it, and I try to give myself those moments to accept failure, accept setbacks, and accept them as a part of the job and not as a defeat, and to have a really consistent barrier about work and life balance, right? So that looks like scheduling my emails to go off after 7 p.m. or not scheduling Zoom calls during the weekends. And for me, it's really helped with burnout because it is something I experienced because, and let's be honest, like if I think back to when I graduated and how I graduated, it was in the middle of a pandemic and everyone was trying to find jobs. And so I really like my mentality was like everything I find, I'm gonna say yes to. And even if it's less than I am supposed to be paid, even if they don't pay me as early as I'd like to, I'm gonna take it because the world is on fire. But that really wasn't healthy and it wasn't sustainable. And so my mindset now is more about I'm not a person who wants a lot, right? And so it's easier for me to schedule a time for work to happen and fill it, and then whatever's left over can wait. That's what I'm, and I still struggle with it, by the way, but that's what I'm looking to doing, and that's what I'm trying to do actively. But really, I don't think anyone who works more than 10 hours a day and works from themselves and is doing paperwork at night, and I see this happen a lot with a lot of my friends who are also entrepreneurs. I don't think that's healthy. And so my personal advice is, girl, take it easy because it's a marathon. And I think this is the healthier way. And I think, if we learn anything about the undocumented experiences, we have enough stress as it is. Don't put more pressure on yourself than you need to. This is a perfectly, realistic alternative to traditional work, but that doesn't mean that it's gonna look the same. So you need to keep your expectations realistic. You need to plan ahead, and you need to have a better mindset. I think this is everything, and all of this kind of relates to that feeling of defeat and of imposter syndrome that you can experience as an undocumented person. and it's something that I still struggle with a lot, right? Feeling like I don't belong in something. It's something that we start really learning when we get into this country. Um, every time um, we felt that we don't belong, we're made to feel that we don't belong. I think really it um, becomes more compound, and it's harder to address and to just brush away. And it's something that eats at you, right? In every, for me, it was in every academic setting, in every setting where I had to talk as an authority, I felt like I did not belong and I wasn't supposed to be talking about anything because I didn't know what I was talking about, right? And that's something that's really hard to break through. Um, I can think of many ways in which I still adapt myself, right? But again, uh, you need to break through that and create a new mindset for yourself because that's the only thing that's the only way that you can keep going and succeed. And you know, if you don't believe in yourself, how are you going to convince clients of buying into you, buying into your product, buying into your service? So I really think you need to believe it for yourself before you try to sell it because nobody's going to sell something that you don't even want to buy. And it's a different way to think about things, right? Usually you think about a salesman selling a product, not selling themselves, but there's power to your character being a part of what the person gets, right? Think about it in relationships terms, right? If I have a client that identifies with me, or if I identify with a client, if a client is a small business and this client faces a lot of the struggles that I also struggle with, I think it's easier to make connections, easier to communicate, and easier for you to work together and to convince them of working with you, right? Because you're competing with a lot of people. But uh, if you use these things as strengths, and it's all about that mindset of using it as strength, I think you're setting yourself up for way better results and for way better relationships with your clients and with yourself. Now, this I think is the clearest one that when you're venturing into something like this that requires so much dedication, you will make mistakes, and it's something that you have to be okay with. I, you know, we can be our own worst judges and our worst critics, and it's really hard to break through that. And again, it's just something that you need to be okay with. I've made many mistakes when it comes to working with myself. You know, forgetting about paperwork, emails, not doing the correct procedure. It's something that you need to fake till you make it, um, because there's a lot of people who have been doing it for a lot of years, and so really you just have to believe in what you bring to the table and why you and your work have value, right? And that's hard to do. Um, again, imposter syndrome and all of those things make you not value your work and won't value yourself as much. But those mistakes don't make it any less valuable. I guess that's what I want to say. The most important thing I think is for you to value what you do, value the work that you do every day, and know that is not a race, that it's a marathon, and that even though you're the head and the HR and the creative director of the company because you work for yourself, it doesn't mean that you have to do everything for yourself, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to have the expectation of 10 people on one person. And I guess if I have to leave with anything is that there is a lot of potential in the undocumented community, and that there are a lot of opportunities for us to support each other. And so, if anything, if you're not looking to go into working on your own or working as an independent contractor, I think you should consider supporting undocumented contractors and freelancers and people who this is their only line of work and the only way that they can support themselves, maybe support a family. Because a lot of the time we don't even think about these people when it comes to, you know, getting job done quick. And there's a lot of good people doing amazing work all over. And yeah, just make sure you support an undocumented person in your community.
Thank you so much, Pablo. I'm going to go ahead and open it for questions from either students or any staff, faculty that may have any questions for Pablo. I actually have a question for you, Pablo. Can you tell me what was the biggest challenge about learning how to process everything for your LLC? What was the biggest challenge and what did you learn? Oh, yes.
I think it was about getting over the fear of government. It's irrational because, you know, you have to do it, and you know we have to file taxes anyway. But I really was afraid that they were gonna get me. Yeah, it was, and it's something that I think about, like it's silly, but it's really deeply ingrained in like that undocumented experience, and just not trust the government, and not trust giving out your information. It was hard to get over that.
I mean, that makes sense. Yes. We do have someone asking, so how was it starting your LLC?
It was a race against the clock because I was going to graduate in 3 weeks. Yeah. And I had to find a source of income. And I had been working previously with the school as a student, doing kind of graphic design projects. I did a lot of projects for the CCL. I did a lot of projects for the Office of Success and Engagement and the Office of Student Life. But I had not worked as a contractor before, right? So it was really like crunch time. And I remember reading every possible online source that there was on it. And, you know, there was a lot of contradictions, and I was coming to Maria to talk to her. And but it took a while to get here. And then after that, I was like, what do I do with this? I was like, I don't know what to do with this. It was something hard to figure out, but I think that was definitely worth doing, because I now I feel good about the way I work, and I like there's a honest piece to it that is really important, and that when I come to an employer, I can make them feel comfortable in working with you, because that's something that I didn't talk about, but it's true that a lot of people, when they learn that you're undocumented, they're wary to work with you. They're like, is this legal? Are you sure? I'm gonna talk to HR just in case. But it really made me feel comfortable that my end of the paperwork, my end of the all of the requirements was taken care of, and that I was, I guess, safe. I was working in a safe way, and it's a huge thing, a huge weight off my shoulders to think of, to not have to think about those things anymore.
Someone asked, would you be open to accepting interns?
That's a good question. Well, listen, this is a project that it's still developing, and something that I want to make into something bigger. I've actually been talking with a fellow graduate, a fellow alum from the U. I'm not sure if you know, Tamaya Ray, but she also graduated, and she's a graphic designer. So we're talking about making a design firm. So, you know, maybe in the future, I don't know that within the year, because it takes a while to figure those things out. And but I'm really excited about a lot of these ventures, and in the future, of course, I would be happy to work with you and to work with you students and other students, documented students, to really show you what we learned, you know, and where we messed up, and all of the insight that we have. Yeah, for sure.
And then Christopher, if you want to unmute your microphone, I think you have a question.
Yeah, Chris Mendoza. I'm one of the academic advisors over at Triton College. Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience. And you know what, right now it just kind of stuck out to me that you said, um, a lot of this is really, the work that you guys put into it, or your day to day, really comes from your craft sometimes, right? Especially if you're an individual contractor or a freelancer. And you know, when it comes to work, I'm always kind of like, it's always a tough question to answer students, right? Like, what would I do for work, and like, post graduation and things of that nature. And I'm wondering, like you said, support freelancers, support the undocumented contractors. Right now, it, are there any kind of like events or fairs where these freelancers can show their work and make themselves available to the community to show like, hey, well, this is the kind of work I do. This is what I'm available for, just so like their names are out in the open.
So I do know of a couple of networks, and there's no Chicago-based network, and I'm actually talking to um, the creator of the Undocumented Professionals Network in California, because I really want there to be a Chicago Undocumented Professionals Network where we can promote each other's work, and it's not just creative work, but it's like business, anything that you can make into contractorship work. There's a lot of people that do great work in Chicago, and there just really isn't that centralized place where you can go and see all of their work. But there are other things like it, so it's definitely something that should be there for people in Chicago, But in general, um, if you, I mean, the way I connect with people like that is the UndocuProfessional hashtag on social media, and I mainly engage with the creative community, but not sure if there's any more online.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, I believe you have a question.
I do.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, Pablo. It's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, first of all, thank you for all the work that you're doing with us and the work that you've done in the past. If it wasn't for Pablo, you wouldn't see all our beautiful marketing materials and our beautiful Instagram. So you can definitely thank him for that. But I have another comment briefly before my question, and that is that we don't have sort of this formal undocumented professionals network, but if you really think about it, all of the street vendors, all of these folks that sell their own stuff, right? Like that is the undocumented professionals network, right? Like they are entrepreneurs on their own. They're figuring it out on their own without having any college education, maybe not even speaking English or reading or writing English, right? So I would, in the future, love to think about how we can sort of include those folks into this conversation, right? But then my question for you is, in the beginning, you talked a little bit about making that decision between pursuing a career in health, because that's what you were studying, and then choosing to go the route that you are in now, right? So I'm wondering, I'm sure that was an emotional decision, and I'm wondering, like, around when did that happen, and what kinds of conversations did you have to have, right? Like, who was involved, your mentors, faculty, anything like that?
Yeah, this decision really happened over my sophomore year, I believe, and I think I said a little about this, but I came in and I was kind of in denial about my situation. It was the first time I was away from home. I was really just trying to blend in, not trying to bring attention to this thing that was different about me. And so I convinced myself that if I ignored it, it would be fine. Until Mark Carbonaro, who reached out to me, and then he just talked to me and said, "Hey, I just want you to be aware. This path that you're following, which is a nursing degree that I was following at the moment, there's no way for you to work as a licensed nurse in Illinois, right? And so there was alternatives. He told me you could move to California, and in California, nurses can work as if they are documented." And that was a hard decision because my family's here, all of my connections are here, and it really took a lot of talking to my mom and telling her, like, and also thinking about what do I want for myself, like, because up to that point I hadn't really thought why I was studying nursing or why I was so set into healthcare. So my mom really did pressure me a lot into finding a real career, which meant like a doctor, a lawyer, or a businessman, something that to her was profitable and was like respectable, right? So it did take a lot of talking to my parents that like your vision for our American dream maybe isn't what it's gonna be, and that we have to make do with what we have. And I may not have the chance to stay with you and still be a nurse or still be a doctor, but I do have a chance to still go to college and to still make a career, and I have the opportunity there. Why not take it, right? And so that's something that my mom always taught me. That's something that they never can take away from you is your education, and that's something that you always have with yourself. So in my mind, I really knew that no matter what happened, and no matter if I could work in healthcare or in design or anywhere, that I needed to graduate because it was more the achievement, the principle, and the fact that education is something that's still, I mean, it's really invaluable. Everything I learned, all the connections I made, all the things that I learned about myself, it was really something that I was set on, right? So when it came to deciding, I think it really was just about what's making me money right now. What's what's feeding me, what's paying my tuition. And not that I didn't like it, because I obviously love it. I made a whole, look at this. But yeah, it was hard, but it's down to making lemonade out of lemons. That's what it's down to.
Any other questions for Pablo? Andrea, you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what advice do you have for those of us that like are still in, science major? What would you encourage for us to do, or like recommendations or tips that you have for us and looking for a career after college, or things that we could pursue after?
So I'm not going to pretend to be an advisor and know where you can work and you can't work. What I'm going to tell you is there really are alternatives out there, right? And so that's something that I mentioned with nursing, is that if that's something you want to do and there's that sacrifice is worth it to you, and maybe, who knows, maybe your family like loves the beach, right? And you want to just move to California, then go for it. Like it's easier to make decisions in a vacuum, but when you consider your family, when you consider, what you want, and if you really want to pursue it, I think there, in California has another one of the biggest undocumented communities there. So there's a lot of resources there for you to continue. It's about making that leap, really. Because what I had was a crossroads, and this sounds so cheesy, but it was a kind of a crossroads of like both the two things that I liked, one that I couldn't do, and that was just in the distance, unless I moved somewhere else, and one that I, can make do with staying here. And I love Chicago, so I was never going to leave Chicago. I think that was the deal breaker for me, and my family here, and all of the friendships that I built here. But that's not to say that you can't make the leap the other way. And I think if there's something that you really want, you should really go for it. But ask your advisor.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I do want to say, Andrea, like if you are looking for healthcare careers, earlier today we had someone from I believe what is it called? PH Dreamers Pre-Health organization. And we will send all that information out at the end of the session, but you know, they will help you in terms of navigating healthcare careers. And again, also some laws are changing, right? So that's also helpful. So I will make sure to connect you.
And I just dropped the slides, the link to her slides in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly.
Sure.
Do you have any questions for Pablo, Kelly? Any questions?
No, it's wonderful to see you, Pablo. It's great that you're doing so well, and we so appreciate you presenting today. This is such valuable information.
Thank you. I missed you a lot. I do. Everyone here.